Hi guys, welcome to the Young Patrons Party. My name is Tori Bedford. Tonight we're really excited. We have a really exciting lineup of events. We're going to be honoring Dr. Karilyn Crockett, the City of Boston's first Chief of Equity, with the inaugural Rising History Maker Award. We're also going to learn how to make some cocktails with Edgar B. Herwick III from GBH's Curiosity Desk and Brian Weber from Bully Boy Distillery. We also have some amazing surprises coming up later. We're giving away some free stuff. There's going to be door prizes, and we're going to get a chance to hang out with each other. So, we figured we should start this off with a libation. So go ahead and get your cocktail mixer ready, get your kombucha or your tea or your juice or whatever you're drinking. We're going to kick it off with this video from Edgar and Brian, who are going to show us how to make a martini and share about a little bit of history. There's a lot of history apparently around the martini, which I didn't know. So Edgar and Brian, if you want to take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Edgar B. Herwick III here from GBH's Curiosity Desk, and I am thrilled to be here on behalf of the Massachusetts Historical Society. And let's be honest, as far as societies go, Mass Historical Society is really one of the great societies here in the Boston area. You cannot go wrong. I am live at Bully Boy Distillery, and we've got a little bit of a treat for you this evening. And my partner in crime for the evening is Brian Weber, bartender extraordinaire. How you doing, Brian?
Thank you, Edgar. Brian Weber here, folks. You can find me bartending here, as well as State Park Bar and Griddle in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
So the idea is that we are going to make a couple of drinks to sort of spice the evening up a little bit, and I hope you got out and got that grocery list filled up so you can make them with us. Brian, you ready to make some drinks?
Always. Let's do it.
I'm ready to drink some drinks. So what do we got up first here?
Sure. So first we're doing a cocktail everybody's heard of, the martini. Specifically, we're going to do a gin martini. This is a cocktail, like I said, everybody's heard of it from James Bond movies to, just basic American culture. But what we really want to talk about a little bit here today is what goes into it, how you can make it at home, different ways you can, fool around with it to find the exact kind of martini that works for you.
So what makes a martini a martini?
Sure. So the history of martini is fairly murky, like any classic cocktail.
Yeah.
Commonly believed story is that it actually originated in the U.S. in a town called Martinez, California, where they were, at the time of the gold rush, they had settled out there. They were mixing different variations of maraschino liqueur, gin, aromatic bitters, and a little bit of vermouth, which is a fortified wine. So you can still find Martinez cocktails on different menus around the country today. There's different recipes you can find in different cocktail books, but the martini is just a slight variation of that, where we've essentially removed the maraschino liqueur and are working with a basic combination of gin, dry vermouth, and some bitters.
All right.
Cool. So first thing we're going to start with is bitters. You're not going to find bitters in every recipe for a martini. It doesn't, make it sacrilege to include them or not, or disclude them. But, the house recipe here calls for a little bit of orange bitters just to bring out some more of that citrusy flavor that you're going to find in many gins.
So what exactly is bitters, right? You see a lot of cocktails that call for bitters.
Sure.
You go into like a nice liquor store these days and you'll see like dozens of different kinds of bitters. What the heck are bitters?
So bitters are essentially a liqueur that's been intensified in flavor through the addition of roots, herbs, different barks, some spices, citrus. You'll see like orange bitters like we're using here, lemon bitters, grapefruit bitters. You'll see cardamom bitters, as well as just general Angostura aromatic bitters, which are just both a regional variety of herbs, depending on who's making them. But they're essentially just very intensely flavored liqueurs that add, you don't require a ton. You'll see on recipes it just requires dash of bitters, 2 dash bitters, because the flavor is so intense that it really doesn't take too much to change the flavor profile of the cocktail. A good rule of bartending is, a lot of times you'll see the pouring in go from smallest amount to highest amount. That generally follows the rule of cheapest to most expensive. The idea being that when you mess up, or if you mess up, you're not wasting too much stuff when you toss it out. So generally we start with our bitters, and that way if we pour over too much, we're not throwing out some gin with it.
That is an excellent pro tip, by the way.
Yeah.
Excellent pro tip.
It's important to bartending, but especially at home. You know, when you're buying different bottles, you won't have to be going through, one of your 20 different pours of whiskey. So next we're gonna do the vermouth. So we're gonna start with 3/4 ounce of vermouth. The house recipe here is 2 1/4 ounces gin, 3/4 ounce vermouth. You'll see different variants of that from whichever bar you go to, or whoever's making the drink for you. But a good place to start if you're working at home and just getting into martinis, maybe start at a 2-to-1 gin to vermouth ratio. Play around with it, see how you like the flavors of the vermouth coming out, flavors of the gin coming out, and you can adjust accordingly.
Okay, question for you now here.
Sure thing.
Because this used to confuse me when I first was learning about martinis. Now, the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
A dry martini has less vermouth in it, and yet the vermouth you're using is dry vermouth. So it sort of seems like a dry martini should have more dry vermouth,
Right.
but that's not the case.
Very, very important. So when you're in the liquor store, looking at different vermouths or Amaros is a section you'll find these in, you'll see sweet and dry vermouth. Vermouth is a term for a fortified wine.
And
So
fortified means what? Strengthened?
strengthened
how?
with additional spirit. So there's a little bit wine that's infused with, probably some additional flavors, but also more alcohol.
Okay.
So distilled that at a higher level. So you're gonna get some notes of wine, but really you're seeing more of the flavor infusions like, again, regional herbs, different baking spices, different citrus notes. A lot of times grapefruit and lemon are pretty popular in those. But what you're dealing with when you see sweet and dry vermouth is essentially, sweet vermouth is fortified red wine, dry vermouth is fortified white wine, which is why you're gonna see a clear color come out of this bottle versus if you had a bottle of sweet vermouth, you'll see a dark red or an amber color.
All right.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So moving along here. So we're going to do 3/4 ounce of sweet vermouth. And then next we're going to use our gin. So today we're using Bully Boy's Estate Gin, which is London Dry style. That's another thing when you're in a liquor store looking at different gins, you're going to see American gin, Old Tom gin. They have the same base idea, which is a grain alcohol that's been infused with the flavor of juniper berry. London Dry style, the traditional definition is just essentially no flavors have been added after the gin has been distilled. So you might see different American gins where they've had like lavender added after. It'll sit with lavender and infuse. Perhaps different citrus notes will be, grapefruit peels might be added after. London Dry says once it's distilled, whatever's in the bottle is in the bottle.
I gotcha. So what's the sort of benefit of a London Dry gin? Like in terms of like how it tastes or what drinks you might use a London Dry in?
The flavor profile is great for a martini with London Dry gin because it's especially crisp. The notes you're getting are intensely juniper flavored, herbal, botanical flavored. You'll get perhaps hints of rosemary, you get hints of lavender, coriander, cardamom are really popular. But they're all very like crisp, kind of tight flavors, which pairs well with a fortified wine, which is a little bit more aromatic, herbal, provides some good balance there. From there, we're just gonna do 2 1/4 ounces. Again, if you're working at home and you're just trying to feel out, you're not sure exactly where you want to start, maybe you're new to martinis, 2-to-1 is a great place to start, and then adjusting from there. But once it's in a mixing glass, just throw a little ice in. Here we have a bartender's mixing glass, but at home you're definitely able to just use a pint glass. Anything that can fit about 3 or so ounces of spirit along with some ice is going to work perfectly. Use a bar spoon. We have the spoons here with a large top because we have a large glass, but if you're using something at home, a straw or anything that's a little bit thin that you can get to the bottom and easily move around the ice will work just fine.
All right.
Throw that in. There's no real exact time for how long you're supposed to do this. What you're doing here is, one, you're chilling the spirit, and then you're also diluting the alcohol a little bit through the ice. What that's going to do, that's going to cut back the alcohol flavor some and allow you to taste more of those flavors that are infused into the spirit, like the juniper from the gin, the herbal base from the vermouth. That's going to come out a little bit more through the use of ice.
Now, you mentioned James Bond earlier, and he famously sort of orders his martini shaken, not stirred, correct? Now,
Correct.
you're stirring it. rather than
Bingo.
shaking it.
Yeah.
Does it actually make a difference?
To answer your question, there's not a right or wrong answer. Generally when you're using vermouth, you're probably going to get more of a balanced flavor by stirring it. But if you have a stronger propensity towards kind of melded flavoring of it, shake it up. Do whatever works for you.
All right.
Excellent. All right. Once that is ready to roll there, just grab your strainer, pour into your martini glass. We're going to use a lemon swath garnish. Just put a little lemon oil of that. But when you see martinis with olives, generally that's with a dirty martini. But again, if you want to use an olive on your dry martini, go for it.
Personal preference. Do you have a personal preference with this drink? Do you like it with a little bit of lemon, or do you go olives?
I go with the lemon swath. Just that little note of citrus right on the nose before you take a sip really helps express the gin flavor. So that's my choice. And when you're doing this, just grab a little peel here with your standard peeler at home. You're going to squeeze both ends of the lemon peel, and what you're looking for is as you squeeze, you'll see a little expression. Yeah, some lemon oil pop out there. Some people like to wipe the lemon peel around the rim. That adds some additional notes of citrus.
You can also see it sort of laying on the top.
Right, and that'll settle up there. The purpose of this is, in that first sip, you're getting a very intense note of citrus that, again, kind of helps calm the flavor of the alcohol. So you're getting more of the infused flavors from the spirit, again, like juniper from the gin, as well as the regional herbs from the vermouth.
Nice.
And that guy is ready to go for you.
Should I give it a try?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is to all of you. Sorry you can't be here with me. Yeah, I'm sold. I'll pay for, I would pay for this.
Great.
I would pay for this.
Good. Well, you have to.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
That was awesome. And it's so important to know that Bully Boy is a Boston-based distillery, and seeing that, you can see that they really take it seriously and they turn cocktail making into an art form. Up next, I kind of want to talk about how important it is that Dr. Crockett is getting this award tonight. She has a role in the city as Boston's chief of equity, where she is actively changing the course of history. And we are right now living through a truly incredible historic moment. It's a pandemic. There is a massive civil rights uprising in this country. It's incredible to see what's happening all around us. And it's so important that people like Dr. Crockett are doing the work that they do. So I'm going to let MHS trustee John O'Leary present the inaugural Rising History Maker Award to Dr. Crockett.
Thank you, Tori. I'm John O'Leary, trustee of the Massachusetts Historical Society. And tonight, it's my great pleasure to present Dr. Karilyn Crockett the Society's Rising History Maker Award. As the citation reads, the Rising History Maker Award is conferred upon an individual whose accomplishments mark a milestone in history and who has created a significant positive impact upon the community. The award recognizes outstanding leadership and unwavering dedication to advancing civic empathy and responsibility. Its recipient has made contributions that will leave a lasting impact for future generations. I can think of no one who more perfectly exemplifies these words than Dr. Crockett. As the City of Boston's first chief of equity, she's worked closely with the mayor to make our city a more just and equitable place. She and her office have worked tirelessly to dismantle barriers to race and gender inequality, and to support immigrants, refugees, and other vulnerable communities. And as if that weren't enough, she comes to this work with the perspective of a scholar of history, American studies, and urban planning. Her roots at the MHS run deep, from participation in our brown bag talks during her doctoral studies at Yale, to field trips with her educational nonprofit, My Town, the multicultural youth tour of what's now, to her service on our board of overseers, and her use of our collections as a lecturer at MIT. As one reviewer wrote of her book, People Before Highways, Dr. Crockett reminds us of the strength of people to make change and the collaborative nature of what it means to build a city. Words hardly suffice for achievement so far, and it's so exciting to see her make history. Please raise a glass and join me in congratulating Dr. Karilyn Crockett. Cheers.
Here is this beauty here. So amazing. John, thank you so much for such lovely words and citation, and Tori as well for hosting us and for just making me feel so welcome. I am slightly overwhelmed. I didn't think I would feel that on Zoom, but I gotta tell you, I'm just sitting here in my feelings a little bit. I know that the young patron party is really where it's at. So I know you all have been celebrating all night and have saved the best, the juiciest, the funnest part for now. Again, just so honored and amazed to be the recipient of this beautiful Rising History Maker Award. When John started talking, and his comments were saying that I have been working so tirelessly in this job that I've had for 4 months, I felt like he was talking into the future deeply. So there's much work that I'm standing up as the chief of equity for the city, and I'm just so honored to be here with you. It is also true that I've had a very long history with MHS, from being just a person in the city trying to learn about Boston. I am currently, and with honor, sitting on the board of overseers, but for so long has been someone who's really been trying to understand, the history of my city, and MHS has been a crucial part of that journey for me. I have many fond memories of just Peter Drummy showing me things that I had never seen, had never heard of, wanted to know more about, trying to touch things if I could or not, trying to figure out, should I have on gloves? What could I do? But so many of the collections and so much of the staff have been just allies, friends, guides for me for a couple decades now, dare I say, through being a person working with young people in the city, trying to learn about their city through our work at my town. I can remember being in grad school, taking many sprints from New Haven on Amtrak for a midday lunch series, and just feeling so humbled and encouraged to be able to give back now through work with the Board of Overseers. And so it is just such an honor, again, to be recognized, particularly along with such luminaries, including Governor Baker and Mayor Walsh, whom I know were both honored earlier tonight as the 2020 recipients of the John Codman Ropes Awards. Just incredible. For me, I will say that history has been a lifeline for me from a very young age. Many of you know or may know that I was raised by my grandmother, and my grandmother was the historian in our family. She's the one that told all of the business of everybody from as far back as she could remember and her mother could remember. And in our apartment in Dorchester, family members would come from the North Shore, from the South Shore, from other parts of the country to kind of hear stories about us. And so it's powerful to me as the great granddaughter of slaves, formerly enslaved people in South Carolina, Nancy and Yancey Young, or my great grandparents, and they brought a fortitude and a fight to my family story, and they tether all of our movements, they tether our aspirations, and I know their stories and I know their names because my grandmother made sure I did, and we all did. And through my grandmother, I really learned that history can make you feel deep, can make you feel bigger, more expansive than yourself. And in many ways, that's what it should do, that we are connected to everything and everyone, and can stand in possession of ourselves, which for me has been vital. Unfortunately, too often, I would say in this city, and in so many cities, history can be really used as a weapon to make us feel small and smaller, and shrinking, smaller than we are, shrinking almost into invisibility, especially for people of color, especially for Black people, for Native American people in this country, whose histories and stories are too often made to be invisible, to make us rendered as invisible. So tonight is an opportunity to really celebrate and remember all of what history can be, and its expansiveness and its power and its ability to give us true connective tissue. And I really stand here with all of you to shout out that power, to invite us all to reclaim the bigness of our stories that can be shared, that can really center the reckoning that we're in, to center this idea that our consciousness can be more expansive. So I thank you to MHS for being that tether for me, for helping to make sure that my grandmother's lessons were not just lessons that I could learn at home, but were lessons that I could travel across the city to learn more about at MHS. I also want to recognize the young patrons and your verve, your zest, your vision and your fun, and your honoring of me in this way. And also shout out to my personal shiro, Catherine Algor, for such an incredible commitment to making sure that we always look up and we always look out and seize the moment, because that is what big and great institutions always do and must do. And my thought partner in so much of this work has been Gavin Cleepsies. He's here, who has been running along with me, trying to make really dynamic public programs dreamt up and made real. And so all of that, again, has been held here for me. So tonight is a special pleasure. And I would like to dedicate this award to my grandmother, to my Nana, Mary Ann Young Williams Crockett, who is powerful force and still here, and would be so tickled to know that we have this fancy Tiffany bowl to take home and celebrate, and to know that that we can be big, that we are mighty, and not only we're rising, but we're here, and we are grateful to all of you. Thank you so much. Let's get the party going, the rest of it, right? So thank you, here.
All right, let's all unmute and just.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crockett. So I think that's such an important point about looking to the past and also having a vision for the future. And it's important to remember as well that Dr. Crockett is Boston's first chief of equity. We have not had a chief of equity prior to Dr. Crockett. So this is a really exciting path towards the future and towards that vision. And it is really exciting, especially in this cultural moment. So thank you for the work that you do. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is, presumably you finished your first cocktail, and we're gonna get some instructions about how to make a second cocktail that also has historical roots. So I will turn it back over to Edgar and Brian from Bully Boy now.
Well, now that I personally, at least, am nice and warm from the inside from that delicious martini and 2 or 3 more that I had real quickly after it, we're gonna move on to a slice of local history for our next drink.
That's right, Edgar. We're gonna be making the Ward 8, which is has a strong classic cocktail history. What's unique about this one though is it was originated right here in Boston at the Loch Ober restaurant sometime around the mid 1800s. As with most of our classics, the exact details of who made it, when, and where, and how are a little murky, and depend on exactly who you're talking to, right? Yeah.
So I've heard that it originated because there was a politician who had been running for office, and he was delivered his victory by strong turnout in Ward 8, and so it was like a celebration drink, and that's how it started. Yeah. That's what I've heard. But again, as you say, it's
you believe you, whatever. Yeah. That's I've heard that as well, and it makes sense given the name. It's not surprising there's a Ward 8, which is, it could be a term for a Boston sour. A sour being, spirit, lemon juice, and some sort of sweetener through syrup. But it's not surprising there's a Ward 8 that came out right around the time the New York sour came out. So one would expect that was, perhaps the birth of that bitter rivalry.
Yeah. So unlike the Martini, for example, which we talked about earlier being one of these kind of classic earlier cocktails, this one I don't see in a lot of places.
Right, and the flavor profile of it can be varied fairly easily, and it opens itself to a lot of different creativity. As such, it's not as hard for somebody at a restaurant to swap out one of the ingredients and
put a little spin on it and rename it.
Yeah, exactly. Get their royalties too.
All right, well, walk us through it. What's the basics of the Ward 8?
Following our previous formula.
We start with the grenadine?
Yeah, exactly. You're trying not to waste too much.
I'm catching on.
You'll see different recipes calling for this. Sometimes it'll call for half ounce, quarter ounce, bar spoon. Grenadine, I find to have a pretty strong flavor. So we like to use a dasher here, just a couple small ones, and there you go. As you can see, it's a little syrupy, so it's kind of hard to get out of a dasher. But after you make your first one, you can kind of adjust to your flavor profile. If you want a little bit more of that sweetness there, you can always add more. So like I said, so we do a little bit of the grenadine. Here we're going to do a quarter ounce of our OJ, just a little bit there, and a quarter ounce of lime. So that's going to make up our half ounce of citrus that you see in a traditional whiskey sour.
Now, to your point, though, if I'm making this at home and all I've got is some lemons, I can squeeze out some lemon juice, put it in this just fine.
Absolutely. It's up to whatever your flavor profile is. I've done it with lime and grapefruit juice before. That comes out really well. But yeah, whiskey, citrus, and sugar are relatively hard to mess up.
Yeah.
You're going to get something that you like out of it, I think.
All right.
All right, so then we're going to finish it off with just 2 ounces of whiskey.
So this particular type of whiskey, again, whiskey is one of those things where there are so many different types. You already, there's bourbon and rye and this and that and the other thing. So why this particular whiskey for this particular drink? And what's a good sub, or can I just use any whiskey if I've got something at home?
Most common questions that I think come up are, bourbon versus rye, because those are two of the most popular American whiskeys. Bourbon is a whiskey that's distilled from a mash that is 51% corn. So that's got a sweeter flavor to it. Rye whiskey is made from 51% rye. The mash is made from 51% rye.
And what is the mash?
When you are distilling alcohol, you're going to take some sort of plants, essentially. So in this case, we have rye or corn. Add a little water to that. You add some yeast to that. The yeast is going to react and create alcohol along with sugar, and that's what you distill. So within that, that's what's called the mash. You have the water, the alcohol that's been distilled from the yeast, and then the additional sugar. So when you're distilling it, you're essentially boiling that contents. The alcohol is going to boil off quicker in what's a still, so that'll rise up first in steam.
Capture that,
right. And then once it condenses, it turns back to liquid. When it's trapped up at the roof of the still, it slides down a hose and into a separate container, and that's where your alcohol starts from. All right, and then once your whiskey is added there, you are ready to go. So in the previous cocktail, we stirred it, but this guy we're going to shake. And for similar reasons to the way we described shaking a dirty martini, the kind of texture and viscosity of the citrus make it a little bit more difficult to blend.
So the shaking really helps it get together.
Forceful, shaking together kind of gives it a little bit more of a measured kind of fully immersed blend. And then with that, you're just going to pop the top back on your shaker there. That's going to create a seal. And then once you start shaking, as the temperature drops, that seal is going to get tight, so you can feel comfortable really kind of throwing your weight behind it.
I like it. Very recommended shake time. I mean, is it? Do you sort of feel? Can you feel it out? You're like, okay, it's cold enough. It's like whatever.
Yeah, I would say 30 seconds is top. So once you feel that aluminum canister get cold in your hand, you'll start to feel the condensation on the outside. That's probably
there.
Chilled enough. Yeah.
All right.
And just give it a slap on the side there. The seal will break. You want to just shake out the remnants in that top shaker there. Make sure you get all that sweet, boozy goodness. And then whisk up this guy. So this is going to be served up. Up means no ice, but in a stemmed glass.
And what kind of glass do we call this guy?
This is called a coupe. So we have coupe and martini glasses. Coupes are usually reserved for drinks that are drank with no ice but have citrus in them. Usually because there's a little bit more volume in there, so that coupe, just the way it's designed, allows for a more voluminous cocktail to fit all in one.
I like it.
Yeah. So from there, like I said, this is gonna have no ice in it. Obviously we shook up some ice here, so there's gonna be ice fragments. So when we're gonna strain this, we're gonna double strain it. That means through our strainer here, we're also gonna catch any ice pieces that might be falling into the glass just through a simple strainer.
The double strain.
Right, and again, you know, if this is just something you're doing at home and you don't mind a little bit of ice in there and you don't want to wash too many dishes after it's all said and done, feel free to, you know, let those ice chips in if you don't mind them. All right, and lastly here, we're just gonna garnish this with a cocktail cherry.
Very nice.
Ready to go.
All right, let's give it a try. Little piece of Boston history coming into my mouth. That's really nice.
Good, good.
People should serve more of these.
All right, yeah. We got to bring it back.
When do you eat the, do you eat the cherry? Should I eat that at the start? Do I save that till later?
You know,
Do I not eat it at all? Like, is it like totally boorish to eat the fruit?
No. They'll still let you stay at the bar if you eat the cherry.
Thank God.
I like to let it soak and infuse a little bit with the flavors there, and then it's just a good last little dessert piece, the cherry on top, if you will. Yeah, nice. It's like a second drink, you know?
Excellent. This is good. You should make this.
Edgar has a really hard job, doesn't he? It's hard to do what he does. I hope that you are having an amazing evening. We're really happy to have you here. Obviously, we wish that we could be doing this in person, but what's exciting is that the MHS has memberships and they have so many different ways to get involved. They have a virtual public programs calendar, and there is a society's, the link to the calendar will be posted in the chat. They're coming up with really creative, interesting ways to get together, to learn more. It's such a pivotal time to learn about history. As we know, history repeats itself, and we're seeing so many themes that we've seen before. And something that I find really makes me feel better in this time of intense anxiety is to educate myself and to feel like I have a little bit of control over at least knowing, having that knowledge and at least knowing what's coming next in some respect. I think that's something that the MHS provides. I think that's really important. And I think that if you have the opportunity, if you have the means, they would really, love your support. So if you could make a donation to the society, any amount that you can donate, they want to be able to continue doing these events, and the way that they can continue to do these events and these programs and these parties and things in the future, post-vaccine, all the things that they do, so much they contribute. They can only do those things if you can help. So if you can make a donation, their donation page will also be linked in the chat, along with the calendar. That just anyone who wants to get involved, there's so many opportunities to get involved, and it's such an important organization. So we're really, really grateful, and we're so appreciative that you chose to spend your Tuesday night drinking with us on Zoom. We know that Zoom is really fatiguing. So we wanted to show our gratitude, and we have a couple of door prizes to give away. We're going to be giving away two $50 gift cards to Bully Boy Distillery, a $50 gift card to the Black Dog Retail Shop, and 2 memberships to the Massachusetts Historical Society. Awesome. Okay, so congratulations to our winners. Thank you all so much for coming to this. We hope you have a great night. We're really, really grateful that you spent your time with us, and we hope that we'll see you at a similar event soon, and that you consider donating and reaching out for future programs. Have a great evening. Thank you guys so much.
A long, long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. And I knew if I had my chance that I could make those